Retail is obviously going through a fairly turbulent time, driven from a lot of the trends from COVID, and then B, obviously pressures from supply chain, and then the cost of living crisis. I mean that retailers are really being squeezed from all angles. The competitive nature amongst the retailers is getting more severe, and that's putting more pressure on retailers to be more competitive in terms of how they price their products, but also in terms of how they run their store. And overall, consumers are shopping differently. So if you look at the consumer trends that we saw pre, during, and now post-COVID, they've been very, very different. So pre-COVID, we were obviously advancing towards more convenience type shopping. People were visiting supermarkets at a higher frequency per week, but with a smaller basket size. Obviously, COVID completely stopped that, and we almost saw a kind of reverse of that trend. Since COVID, we've seen some consumers come back to the store, others have stayed online, and that puts equal pressure on retailers to make sure that they are maximizing their profits. The number one bugbear of all consumers is queuing. So retailers are doing a lot at the moment to try and reduce queues at their front end, because they know that that's a key metric that consumers look at in terms of how they rate the experience within that store. So having an extremely efficient front end that means that queues don't build up is extremely important, and that means you've got to have the right technology mix for the consumers that come in and shop within that store. How we help retailers with this particular problem is we have a consultative and data analytics platform called Advisory Services. It's a consulting-led approach that uses retailers' data to actually look at and predict the customer flows through a store, and therefore what technology should that retail environment have, that particular store, in terms of technology across the front end. And we've moved very much away from, in the old days, every retailer would put 4, 6 or 8 self-service devices into each one of their store. Now we're very much tailoring the technology to each store, knowing that the demographic, the shopping journey, and the customer expectations will differ store by store. So we're going to a much more tailored approach to really deliver the right technology into the right stores to meet those consumer demands. We're also starting to see that consumers are more and more demanding self-service in stores. So they recognize that actually, because there's more devices, there's less queues, it's usually a quicker route to check out and exit that store. So retailers that don't have self-service come under a lot of pressure from their consumers to actually deploy self-service. Within those retailers that have had self-service for a long period of time, what we're starting to see now is retailers putting more and more variants of self-service device out into the store. So a lot of the retail customers that we're working with that are going through self-service refreshes or even doing self-service for the first time are using the learnings from the last 15, 20 years. So I think we've really reached a bit of a tipping point in consumer adoption or acceptance of self-service. And that's primarily driven by the fact that actually consumers associate self-service with a faster exit from the store. Obviously, self-service affords retailers to have a higher front-end capacity. They can have more devices across the front end in a smaller square foot, and therefore they can get faster throughput. And faster throughput means quicker transactions, it means less queues. Ultimately, it means a better consumer experience for the end user. And if you look at most retailers now, so if you look at a grocery retailer in the UK or France as an example, they won't just have self-service devices at the front end for checkout. They'll also have them in the cafe, in the QSR area. So if you're going to grab a coffee or lunch while you're shopping, you can use a self-service device to actually buy your coffee, buy your meal. They use endless aisle points at different areas of the store. So if you're looking for a particular item and it's out of stock, you can order that product and have it delivered to your home, so they don't miss the revenue and the consumers don't miss on purchasing what they require. So the digitalization of the shopping journey is really the key trend here, and self-service in whatever form it takes is just another touch point in that end-to-end digital journey. We work with retailers not only on that technology selection, but also on operational best practices and blueprinting, and also things like onboarding staff. Quite often staff training around new technology is forgotten, and it's really important that you bring the staff members, the store manager, on that store transformational journey to make sure that they're bought in and they understand why you're implementing the technology and what it will deliver to them as well as the consumers. Once we've actually put the technology into the store, this is not the end of the interaction. We then work with retailers to refine that solution offering over a period of time. So if consumer trends change, shopping journey trends tend to change, we're evolving the technology to always meet the needs of that consumer within the store. Diebold's product strategy is focused around three key pillars: more modular hardware, more open software, and more available services. And it's the combination of those three that ensure we are deploying the right technology for the retailer today, but also providing a flexible enough technology that that retailer can evolve that technology over time. A really key aspect of our strategy that's resonating a lot with retailers, because it gives them that ability to take innovation that maybe wouldn't have been available to them in the past from third parties, from startups, integrate it into their core platform, and then deploy it into their store at scale. Obviously, no one's got a crystal ball, so we can't tell what the future holds. But my one piece of advice would be, don't get locked into a product strategy or a vendor strategy that's so wooden that you are dictated to where your touch points go in the future. So the idea of the modularity of the hardware enables retailers to not only configure the right solution they need for today, but if those requirements change, the technology requirements in stores change, consumer trends change, they can actually change the modules in the store. They can retrofit different modules to actually change the use case of particular devices. So having technology that's not only robust, but is wrapped around a services layer with remote capability, predictive monitoring, that means that if the worst does happen and something breaks or is damaged, you can get that unit up and running as quickly as possible and sweat that asset to serve your customer.